Paging Neil Matthews. Paging Neil Matthews. We have a new patient for X-ray. Hello, I've paged our host, Neil Matthews. He will be right with you. In the meantime, please find a seat, take a deep breath, and relax. Welcome to Season 19 of Other People's Shoes, called X-ray. We're exploring what we call sight beyond sight, taking a deep look into the unseen damage and aspects of people's lives. We hope you leave today with encouragement, advice for facing similar challenges, and even a perspective shift. After hearing from our guests, we hope they give you the sight beyond sight. Here's our host, Neil Matthews.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Really appreciate you. Never, ever want to ever take that for granted. It's another great day. So here's my question for you as we get started. What is the significance of your birthday and things that go along with that? If I'm being candid here, a number of years back, I turned 40. That's 5 years ago, roughly now. Wow, that seems like a long time ago. But I remember feeling very much like, I don't want to celebrate this one. And if you know me personally, that's rare. I've never met a spotlight that didn't like me. I've never met a microphone that didn't want me to speak into it. I've never met a stage that didn't want me to dance on it. Okay, I don't dance well because I'm not on Dancing with the Stars. But for whatever reason, when that 40 hit, I did not want to endure that. Is there something right now maybe in your life that you're still like, don't want to endure that? Well, I got a sneaking suspicion that our guest today is going to help us figure out ways to endure the things that maybe still be hidden or unseen damage in our life. Help me welcome in my new friend, Seán, all the way from Washington, D.C. Seán, how are you today?
I'm really well, brother. Thank you for having me.
So I heard the other day on Instagram, which really convicted me. The guy said, and I think it's Simon Sinek or whatever his name is. I don't know. I'm probably saying his name wrong. But he said, if the first thing you do in the day is to grab your phone and to look for notifications, you have a problem. I'm like, okay, that might be me. He said, if you take your phone everywhere you go in your home and it's in your hand, also, you have a problem. That also might be me. And he said, if you go out to lunch with somebody, even though you're not looking at your phone, you flip it over. That signifies to everyone at the table that phone is more important because it's still on top of the table. That also might be me. What do you do with that? Do you have that issue or am I alone?
No, I have three independent thoughts surrounded by those three independent hot takes. The first thing is definitely, as an independent contractor, the phone's always on, the lights are always on, I'm always working. I do need to be a little bit more vigilant with my phone, checking for Reddit notifications or Instagram and things like that. I actually turn about 90% of my notifications off. The only ones I keep on are my Google Calendar, text, and phone calls. Everything else is turned off. It's too distracting. It actually drives me nuts to have my phone go off like that. I don't check my phone first thing in the morning. That's number one. I get up and I mutter a quick prayer and I make coffee. And then after I start to kind of wake up a little bit, maybe 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes into that, I'll check my notifications to see if anything's happening. So when I wake up in LA where I live, it could be 5 a.m. there. It could be 5:30 a.m., 6. So it's 8:39 on the East Coast where people have already started their day. I'm already kind of starting 3 hours behind. So that's that. As far as walking around your house, I think it's okay to walk around your house, to have it on. You just never know. Like, what if you fall? What if you hurt yourself? I actually scold my mother, who's 70 and has knee issues, when she doesn't have her phone with her in case something happens. So I'm like, you need to have your phone on you in case something happens. Like, you need to be able to make a phone call, get the help you need. As far as the third one's concerned about having it on the table, there might be some sort of psychological egotism like associated with that. I am so important. My phone's on the table. I might have to go hit the red button. You know, what I've learned in age and just about myself, because I can get really crispy, especially surrounded by like notifications and distractions, is if I'm in a situation, if I'm in therapy, or if I'm in a meeting or doing something important, or even getting a haircut, I'll put like do not disturb on. When I go to the gym, I hit do not disturb because I don't want to be disturbed. And it probably isn't that important. Also, like, minimize like your ego. Like, what you're doing probably isn't that important. Probably not that important.
That's a great start. By the way, we have to acknowledge this. I was just looking at our calendar. We had your good buddy Mike on. I really like that guy a lot. It's rare that I've given a guest my phone number. I've only done that a handful of times. He definitely qualified and somehow got past the goalie and just really warmed my heart. So I really want to acknowledge him and acknowledge you for coming our way, courtesy of him. So a big shout out to Mike on that. But help me with this, because we love to lead every show truly with this question, and that's this. What size shoes do you wear?
12, probably a wide, but I'm obstinate and I just get whatever fits the foot, probably spills over. But yeah, 12.
And is there a brand or a style that may be more exciting than another?
100%. I'm all in on Adidas and have been probably since Run DMC. I love the Adidas Superstar, specifically the 35th anniversaries, which they don't make anymore. But I used to have several of those pairs, and I love Stan Smiths. They're flat and they're hell for my feet. Not as bad as Vans. I love Vans and Converse. Yeah, they're hell for my feet when I'm on for 16 hours a day sometimes. I love them aesthetically, and we suffer for our fashions.
I wore some J's, some Jordans to a wedding once, and the ground was very dirty, and it made the shoes dirty because they're suede, and I've still never cleaned them properly. I actually need to send them to a shoe guy. I won't wear them because they're dirty, and yeah.
I hear you.
Or just buy a new pair,
I hear you.
which probably isn't the right answer either, so I don't know. Help us with this.
You're an adult.
That's true, I am. When we were sharing with you the idea of X-ray and you coming on, what came to mind for you when you thought about this hidden damage, this unseen thing that may be going on that, again, outwardly people maybe don't notice? It's kind of like you look at the book cover and you're like, oh, it seems fine. It seems okay. But inwardly, that's maybe where the struggle's been, or maybe that's where the damage is. Much like a car in a car accident. We can see outwardly, okay, the bumper's damaged. Inwardly, maybe there's some structural, some upper rails, some lower rails. My body shop friends would be impressed that I remembered that. But help me, is there something in you like that, or are we just way off base in this?
You're right on the money. I mean, I think, the thing is that I learned, like, getting older, especially you mentioned the 40 milestone, as we get older, and hopefully most of us change. One of the things I've been able to kind of really tune into, I'm going to preface all this by saying, like, I am not holier than thou. I am not perfect in any sort of way or fashion. And my opinions are really just relegated to me as a person. I don't represent a group or a society, or this is really just Seán on Seán Island, talking. I've really had to dial in and find empathy and compassion for a lot of people. Do I practice that all the time? No, I don't. I look inward at myself and what's happening in my life, or what has happened in my past, and the scars that are still inherent within me, and realize that everybody probably does suffer in some degree to whatever it be, past trauma or internal turmoil at that point, and trying to have compassion for other people. So to answer your question, I actually was just on our good friend Mike's podcast, episode 206, and we talked about the duck on the pond. The duck on the pond analogy is, I think, like, I'm a pretty chill person. You look at me and people are like, oh, wow, he's really funny, or he's really quick, and he's XYZ. But internally, the duck on the pond is calm and floating along. Underneath the surface, he's paddling like hell. And that's kind of like what internal turmoil is. I think that's a pretty good representation of who I am. Like, if you can't see me right now, my hands, like, I'm doing this with my hands. I'm not nervous. There's just a kinetic energy that's like kind of flowing through me that I think a lot of people maybe don't know how to put into words, but they are suffering from. And that's why you have over-medicated people and therapy and obsession and compulsion and addiction. And that's a whole other topic.
I know that duck analogy. Being in Oregon, we have a few of those duck analogy things. So
Right.
yeah, familiar with that. Interesting. My family and I, we went to the Oregon coast, specifically Coos Bay, North Bend area around June. And my family went off to the dunes. That's a big thing to do in Coos Bay, North Bend area. My brother-in-law has a razor, so they're off doing the dunes thing. And for whatever reason, I don't know, it just makes me sick riding it. Not that they're not having fun. Go have fun. Go do your thing. My family has some origins in Coos Bay. Both my parents met and went to high school together in Coos Bay, at Marshfield specifically. Steve Prefontaine's high school. And I went to this park that I went to as a kid called Mingus Park, actually. And there were some ducks there, and I took some pictures and I posted it to Instagram. I was thinking about that, actually, is the ducks, and they're swimming along and they're kicking like crazy underneath, and no one can see it. No one notices that. Again, more of this season, more of thinking about this season already. Like, I think I'm on the right track. Because I think there's so many people that suffer in silence. Has that been you? Has that been part of your story? Maybe, again, going back to our duck, maybe we call him Donald. I don't know. Maybe call him Huey, Dewey, or Louie. Your choice. I don't know. DuckTales. Woo-hoo.
Woo!
I look at this guy before me, and I think there's got to be more than the book jacket.
Yeah, 100%. Discomfort started at an extremely young age. I was 2 when my parents got divorced. Very, very messy. I never wanted for not. Grandparents were well off through extreme hard work and perseverance, but my mother didn't have a lot. And I grew up in an extremely affluent community outside of Washington, D.C. There's actually a Real Housewives a seasons attributed to where I grew up. Being surrounded by extreme wealth and success and materialism made me feel other. Couple that with not having a father around, and I'm not pointing fingers at either of those parents. Not having that around obviously will affect your children. And then on top of all that, I was also extremely overweight for most of my life. You take all of those things and then a genetic predisposition to addiction and alcoholism, you're going to create a monster. I love this monster, but it really started at a very young age. I mean, I started doing counseling probably when I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, and always felt other from my classmates. I felt dumb, physically slow. Running the mile was like probably the scariest thing I could do it at my age. Those all became metaphors and analogies for my life where people would just lap me in life, whether it be professionally or financially or sexually, or creatively, or in success or achievements. It just all started to happen, and it just felt like a race to the bottom for decades. So, you take all of those things and you put them in somebody, and put them in somebody who was overly medicated early on when like the Ritalin boom was happening, in like the early 90s. You're just going to cause chemical imbalances that are misalignment with your spirit, misalignment medically, misalignment mentally. It takes a lot of work and time to undo those problems. And a lot of people don't have the cognizance or the means or the education or the friend group or environment to correct and course correct. The reason why I have empathy and compassion for a lot of people these days is because I know what that's like. I know that discomfort. I know that pain. I know that suffering. I'm not cured. I'm in recovery. Like hopefully a lot of us are. We're all trying to recover and do better than we used to do.
One of my favorite phrases in life right now, and it comes out of a book series that I really love called Orphan X. It's amazing. I've actually reached out to the author, and apparently he's busy, so he's getting back to us. But one of the phrases in his book says, the greatest 2 words in the English language are next time. And it really spoke to me, next time. And I thought, that just applies to everything. If I didn't make my bed today, well, next time I will. The problem is if you say next time, you have to do it that next time. You can't just be like, I didn't make my bed today. Oh, tomorrow I will. Next time I will. And then that next time comes, you're like, I didn't make my bed again today. Oh, next time I will.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
I think that's the problem sometimes is we think, I'll do it again later, or I'll get to it later. My daughter, who's 17, on her way to 18, really 27 because she's an only child. So, they evolve faster than other kids. I'm positive of that. I have no data to back that, but I've just personal experience. It's really like 17 going on 27, but she always was like, Dad, I'll get to that later. I'll get to that later. And I'm wondering about that for Seán. Is there moments in Seán's life, I'll get to that later. I'll do that again later. Next time I'll do that better. So many times in life, we set out and we say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. We get into our room, we get into our life, we get into our whatever. And it's so overwhelming that we do nothing. And it's like, well, now what? Now you're paralyzed. Now you're the turtle in the shell that you wanted to do, but you can't do. You're then paralyzed.
Procrastination is a 4-letter word, in my opinion. Procrastination is like masturbation. You're only effing yourself. In a lot of, I didn't know how PG or PG-13 I could go. Mike bleeped me 15 times the first time he beat me. I think he bleeped me like 56 times.
I mean, I don't blame him.
That's not exaggeration.
I don't blame him.
So I'm trying to really, on a more serious note, I am a dichotomy, and I do feel it's the next time is a positive and it's a negative. Let me tell you why it's a positive. It's a positive because nothing is ever finite. You can give it another chance. It doesn't have to be solved today, and you can get up and try again. That's the positive. Maybe that's what the author was, alluding to. It doesn't have to be so serious, and you can try again. At first, if you don't succeed, try and try again. But next time is also dangerous for somebody like me because it does create procrastination. And procrastination for somebody like me is like a drug, or it's a salve, or it's something to punt. Some things can be punted, but some things cannot. I was in a a vortex of, I would like to call it destination bias. We mentioned 40. By the time I'm 40, the destination, I can do XYZ, or I will have achieved XYZ. And then you get to that milestone and you figure it's too late, so why try? There's no next time. So you could always, and the positive on that is it doesn't matter. You can always try again. So I think if you have really dialed in self-awareness and cognizance, this is going to sound really arrogant. I'm very blessed where I am extremely self-aware, really to a fault, where I kind of scrutinize and minimize, everything I say or everything I do or how I look or whatever. The advantage of that is I'm able to kind of be like, okay, like not today, you can do it tomorrow. Maybe take some steps to set you up in that, where like a chef would, like prep their mise en place for service in 3 hours, do something in that regard to set you up. Put the book that you want to read that's going to better your life, like in your cart in Amazon. You don't have to buy it because you don't have the $32.99, but just put it there so it's there when you need it. I can't travel to 9 countries today, but I'm going to make a list on the 9 countries I want to go to, and I can start to check them off incrementally in 1 year, 5 years, or 9 years, or whatever it is, and start to slowly take those steps. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I think if you're able to be rational about that next time, I think you could use it as an advantage.
The problem sometimes is, again, we sit and do nothing. And then we're mad, and maybe I'm speaking of myself here, and then I'm mad I didn't do the things that I wanted to do. Lame analogy for some because they may not understand it. But recently somebody asked me, how did you get to 300 shows? That's a pretty big accomplishment in podcasting. And I said, well, here's the thing. I used to run 5Ks. I wasn't very good, but I was okay. However, I did win my age group when I turned 38. The year before that, I was second in my age group, so I wanted to come back the next year and win first because the trophy was bigger. And I had to run a certain amount of races to qualify for runner of the year in my age group. I didn't run every single day. I didn't kill myself. It's a 5K. You can train for a little while and run it on a weekend and be okay. It's not like a half marathon or things of that nature where you really have to train kind of rigorously. I would make a plan. I would go register for a race maybe 3-4 weeks out, and I would give myself time to get ready to go to the race because no one's going to show up for the race if they haven't been training. I mean, that's just stupid. Everyone knows that. Although there were times I would kind of show up and not give it my best. I still ran the race. Didn't just give it my best. And I paid for it in my time and maybe my afterwards. My body would hurt more. So I told somebody it's like podcasting, much like racing. You have to have a plan. You have to know where you're going. You have to know who you're going to talk to. You have to start finding those people ahead of time. Again, preparing the race, preparing the ground. You could use any analogy you want. Gardening, I guess. I don't really know that much about gardening, but you get the idea. If I want to go to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I'm not going to just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go to Chapel Hill today. My wife would be like, cool, you're going by yourself because she's not ready. Same idea is we have to get ready. So Seán, when you think about your life, what are the things that you've done maybe to get ready for those big steps, for those next things? And maybe you could give us some practical help that you've seen success in yourself in, where you're like, hey, this really helped me kind of better my way down the road.
First and foremost, I am a runner. And if you heard what I said 9 minutes ago about the mile being the most frightening thing in a young, overweight child's life, that would blow your mind. That I run minimum 7 miles a day, almost every day.
That deserves a wow on my side. No, that's awesome. That's yes, great job. I mean, I was doing 5, upwards of 5, and that was a lot.
I eat more than you do. So I love sweets and I love to eat. So I'll listen to podcasting and books and whatever else. And I can't sleep. So I just need things to fill my time. Did I wake up one day and decide that was going to happen? Absolutely not. This is several years ago when I was in Orange County. I had reached my apex of weight, and that was 330 pounds. I cobbled together $80 and I bought a bike, and then the bike got stolen. So the other thing about the bike is I wasn't burning the calories I needed or wanted to lose weight quick. So then I started walking. Well, I needed to budget more time to get to the places I needed to go if I was going to walk. So that was another step I had to take. And then I started running out of time. So I started running because I started running out of time, but I still wanted to burn the calories. So that's your, Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb trail to how I got to where I was today. Do I plan? One thing, my good friend, and he's a mentor, is Hugo Cubius. He, years ago, before I really changed, I changed my life at 35 when I moved to California, entered into recovery. One thing he told me that he had been telling me for a very long time, and I finally put pen on paper, was to make a list. You make lists. When you put things into the universe, whether through prayer or whether you put it onto a piece of paper or a board, a vision board, that's why vision boards exist. It's not for crystal worshipers in Venice. The things kind of work. You got to put it on something tangible. You guys write a list of all the things you want to do throughout the year. And I did. And damn near if 80% of them didn't come true. And damn near for the last almost 8 years, if around 80% of those things have all come true. I think there's a lot of power in that. And I tell people that a lot. I can't show them. I'm not going to show them my bank statements because of the number that I wrote down that I wanted to hit that year, because I'm just kind of cagey on that. I wrote down, go to 5 countries this year. And I think I hit 8. Wild. I didn't make a plan. I'm like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. 2 huge opportunities came to me that allowed me to do those things. That's something I think is really important. The last thing, and I'm saying this aloud to hopefully practice what I preach more into the future, but one of my favorite quotes is, I believe it's Abraham Lincoln, who said, measure twice and cut once. I think that's really important. It's essentially like making the plan, checking the list, and then taking the action. Being prepared so you don't paint yourself into a corner where then you're going 1 step forward and then 2 steps backward because you didn't plan accordingly.
Again, we all see that person. You can insert that name, whoever you want. Seems to be Taylor Swift seems to be a popular one for me that I hear quite often. She's very popular. She's now splashed in the NFL, which I'm not so excited about. But the thing for me is I don't think she woke up one day and said, okay, I'm going to be Taylor Swift. I'm going to have an Eras tour. I'm going to be a billionaire. I don't think she just woke up and said, okay, it's now going to happen. I've met these people who have these mindset shifts that have these spoken out into the universe. Careful what you say because it's going to come true. I've had them on and they say, no, it is that easy, Neil. You can do that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. And they're like, but you have to believe it. I'm like, oh, wait. That's maybe where people are failing. Can you think of a time maybe where you had to really kind of come over some adversity because, again, maybe going back to the younger you, it sounds like, who had a lot of naysayers, a lot of noise, a lot of people in his sphere creating a lot of white noise or static? And would any of those people recognize the guy that sits before me right now?
I wouldn't recognize the person that I was looking at today. I was listening to some podcasts. I can't remember. This within the last week or two. And they were like, it might have even been yours. I think it was the Wilkes one. I think it was the one I listened to. You asked him, would the person, when he picked up a guitar at a young age, would he recognize who he was after coming off The Voice? It was something like, it was you.
What a lame podcast that guy is.
Yeah, dude. Like, what a self-shiller. So I was out on a run listening to that podcast and I thought about that. And I think about my journey and how far I've come. 7-year-old or 17-year-old or 27-year-old Seán recognize 42 3/4 Seán? No, in the best way. And that's why, like, I joke to people, like, if you saw who I was at 35 when I moved to Orange County and you looked at my bank statements and you looked at my body of work and you looked internally at the house that was falling apart with no foundation and cobwebs and leaky pipes and all the metaphors I can make and analogies, you would not believe who I am, who I gratefully am today. And I joke to people, I feel like I jumped through a wormhole embodying the Seán I've always wanted to be. And I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I have it all figured out. This is not the case. I have plenty of character defects and they rear their ugly head. As a whole, like, I'm extremely grateful for who I am and how far I've come. And I really, really like the man that I'm becoming. And I've become in the process.
Well, first off, thanks for listening to the Wilkes episode. We really liked him a lot. It took a long time to get him. So very much work accomplished, I guess I could say. I don't take no for an answer. Sometimes I have to work extra hard to get those nice guys like him. He's fun.
Amen.
Now, I have my own little addiction story. I don't have the drug side of things that other people seem to gravitate towards. Trying to get recovery is not something, again, I'm unfamiliar with. I wish I could say that I never had to walk that road. I wish I could say I never had to do that. And I would hope to say that others around me who were in those dark times with me and my wife could say, no, Neil, you're different. You're not the same. I think it allowed me to have that sort of empathy for someone who says, hey, it was tough. It was rough, back and forth, and some success, some 10 steps forward and maybe 3 steps back. And then one day it was 20 steps back and it was only 2 steps forward. For you, when you think about those dark moments where you were maybe in the midst of the struggle, midst of the void, I hear so often people just give up and they're like, I can't take that step. I can't dog paddle my way to the surface to get that breath of air that I so desperately need. I've talked to moms, I've talked to dads who have lost children due to drug overdose or drug addictions that went awry. Why do you think you didn't allow yourself to take that final step to say, I'm out, I'm done?
Honestly, dude, like that's kind of like the greatest enigma and mystery that kind of surrounds my life today. I'm not going to get religious, but I will get spiritual in a sense where, you know, we have an expression, and it's like, for the grace of God go I. If this was Vegas, I would have put all my money not on me, 100%. Not only is the fail rate 98%, those aren't inflated numbers. Like they're just, it's born to lose kind of a situation. The reason why we say for the grace of God go I, it's on any given second, minute, hour, or day, that could be you. So we are vigilant in recovery and doing positive things for ourselves and for others, so we don't stray off the path. I can't really take credit, because that would be pride and ego and negative attributes about humanity. That's why I joke, like I just kind of jumped through a wormhole and embodied this other Seán that was somehow dormant inside of me and is able to do these sometimes Herculean tasks. On paper would be like, you're crazy, that's not going to work. I'm going to bet everything on the house. You're not going to do that. And then all of a sudden, I do it. A lot of it is, we have another expression, like God is doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. I'm mystified. The amount of success, like financially, it's not just the gifts and the prizes. It's the levity, the spirituality, like the relationships I have with people, the rational thoughts and processes I'm able to break down situations and relationships with people. And there's just so much that's happened, not just physically and financially or professionally or creatively, spiritually and mentally, and all the other gifts that are kind of unequatable. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I love Arnold. I loved his book. He goes, don't ever call me a self-made man. He was like, everybody gets help, whether you like it or not. Everybody wants to give me credit for being a self-made man. He's like, don't. And I love that, because everybody does get help. And now everybody doesn't have optics on them, like, and thankfully, I couldn't handle all that pressure. There's tons of people that have helped me, and there's tons of unseen forces that have helped me. And calling back to cognizance and just self-awareness, like I am aware of that, and I'm just so abundantly grateful for all of those things, and try to give that back as much as possible. But not everybody wants to hear it, and you're going to be met with the same fail rate. You try to help people, ask for the help, but won't take the steps or the action to do that. So you got to be
in those dark moments. Even for me, there was a handout, not a handout like a pity handout, but a handout to say, hey, here's a handout to help you get up off the canvas. Who is that handout for you?
Well, first of all, I really think it's important to have the humility and grace to accept it. Everybody wants to be, oh, here we go. Like society is like, well, be a man. Okay, well, be a human. First and foremost, be a human. You're flawed. We need help. Have the grace, have the agency to be like, I can't do this myself. Can I please have some help? And then turn to a higher power or a person in your life that can do that for you. And if you don't have anybody, then do it yourself, or research and take the steps that you need to do it yourself, right? There's a lot of people that have helped me. If you come to mind, I mean, my mother, she's helped me out. She's always been my number one champion, in everything I've ever done. I think about when I got kicked out of sober living, my friend Brody Baker invited me into his home because I didn't have a home. I was like living on my cousin's couch and I didn't have a home. And he was like, yeah, brother, you can move into my house in Santa Monica. Think about people like that. I think about my good friend, Scott Miller, who is my producer of Gaslamp. And who feeds me jobs that are high optics and highly creative and professional at the highest level that I always wanted to achieve in Los Angeles. And he gives me those jobs because he sees value in me that I don't see in myself. Those are some people. I'll give my brother credit. My brother, he got, clean before I did. And having that roadmap, having that positive example in front of me allowed me to realize that it's possible. There's a lot of people that have reached out their hand and given me a leg up, and people still do that on a regular basis. And so I try to do that for other people as much as possible, just because I realize where I was maybe not too long ago in their shoes. And just some people just, ask for the help, but they don't want to do the work. Here's something I told recently on the podcast with Mike. So this one kind of hit a double whammy for me. So a few years ago, I was a producer director on My 600 Pound Life. And if you don't know what that show is, it is people that are well over 600 pounds that are obese and usually suffer from not only comorbidities, but also probably dual diagnosis. They could be addiction issues. There could be trauma issues. There could be bipolar. There could be a lot of different things associated with these people. I, as a producer director, had to spend a lot of time with these people. I had to, get to know them and be in their homes and know their families and their friends or their spouses and a lot of intimate details about very intimate details about their life. I'm not saying every single one of them is true. By and large, and that's not a pun, but by and large, most people, this is like kind of like an analogy for humanity, they wanted the finish line. They wanted the shiny thing at the end, which was the surgery. And they thought their life was going to get better. What they didn't know or realize or take into account was that you had to do the work to even get the surgery. And I'm not talking about like all the stuff that production was making you do, all of the creative beats that we had to do to get to the surgery. You had to physically lose the weight to make it safe for the doctor to operate on you. And then once that doctor did that, you needed to then not diet, you had to change your entire lifestyle to maintain that weight. They thought they would go on the show, they'd sign the paper, and in 30 days, they would get the surgery. Then all of a sudden, they would be 300 pounds, which was an amazing thing for them to be at, and their life would get better. And that's not how life works. And I used to think that's how life worked. Once again, calling back to the destination bias. I get to this point and I will be happy. I will have $10,000 in the bank and I will be happy. I will have a girlfriend and I will be happy. I will move to LA and I will be happy. All of these destinations we put on ourselves as humans. I'm not the only one. Like this is humanity. We are flawed, tumultuous creatures. A lot of people don't realize, and especially like in recovery, it's like once you get sober, like your life doesn't get better. You have to work to let it work. Losing weight, dude. Like I have to do this vigilantly, or it's like a house of cards for somebody like me. And I tried to convey this to these people, and just no one wanted to hear it. They didn't want to hear it. And most people, we'd have like 35 or 50 or something participants starting at the beginning of the season. And then by the end of it, we were barely cobbling together 10. And I don't even think, I'd say less than half even made it to the surgery. I think hopefully you can kind of pick apart like, the lesson and the analogy in there. It's just like, it's work. It's all work. You got to do the work. You got to ask for help. You can't do it yourself. I needed that help. There are so many guys and girls that have the gumption or the self-will or the God shot or whatever it is to like get them into like the rooms of AA or NA or SPLA or whatever, any number of sister programs. I didn't have the gumption. I was so broken and defeated. I needed to geographically, physically, emotionally remove myself from here and go 3,000 miles and then sequester myself into an environment that was a padded room for life before I could enter back into society. Because like mentally, I was just absolutely just decimated.
I'm going to use it in a big air quote. What was the drug of choice, or what was the addiction, root cause of the addiction maybe?
If you really want to go backwards, it was the older I get and the more work I do, I'm uncovering, discovering, and discarding, as we like to say. It really started first and foremost with, sugar or food number one. And now as I get older and I'm able to kind of like transport myself back, it would probably be validation, acceptance, abandonment. Those are like sub levels. To answer your question a little bit more directly, alcohol for sure. And alcohol, people say weed is the gateway drug. I mean, alcohol or pharmaceuticals, 100%. Abusing alcohol at a young age, which led to obviously compulsive marijuana use, which then I'd be out partying and I need to drink more. So let's experiment with amphetamine, Ritalin or Adderall. and I can't ingest them orally, so I got to blow lines of them. I'm a big dude with a slow metabolism. I need them to hit quicker, so I got to put them in my nose. And then, well, that was pretty cool. So let me go to cocaine and let me go to hallucinogenics, because that's just like a sidestep from weed that just perpetuates. It starts with King Alcohol, and then his acolytes love to follow, behind. I identify as an alcoholic, and people like to subcategorize like, oh, I'm an addict and an alcoholic. It's cool. Like, whatever you want to identify as, it doesn't brush off my back. But I do have other problems. Alcohol, I think, was the kind of the nucleus where everything else kind of.
Is it wise, though, to identify or call yourself an alcoholic? That's what I learned recently is I'm going to put the we in there. We need to, as a society, to stop saying that we are this. We're not that. Sean, we're Neil. And I quote, we need to stop saying that we are an addict. We are this. We are not. We're putting that out in the universe, and that's not who we really are. We're more than that.
That's an interesting take. Look, I mean, I'm obviously breaking my anonymity at a very public level. The reason why I do this, A, it's cathartic, and B, if you really took a microscope and like look at the narrative, especially the last like 8 years on how far I've come, it should give you hope. And I think it's important to identify as we, and I think it's important for me to have these conversations, these healthy conversations with people like you. Other people need to hear that it is possible, and it's not just a destination, because it seems Herculean, and it really is. It can be. I do all this because I thought I was alone for so long. I think people need to understand that. The we part, I am more than who I am as far as like somebody in recovery. I'm an uncle, I'm a brother, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a photographer, I'm a lover, I'm a fighter, I'm a runner. Like, I'm all these things. But it's, I guess, for the people that really know me, they knew me as that. So I still identify as that. Keep it, I guess also keep it just at the front of my mind to not forget who I was, so I don't go back to who I was. So I keep going forward.
Well, Seán, help us with this. If people are interested in seeing your work, you mentioned being a director. I know there's some photography that you've done. I know there's world travels that you've done. How can somebody best connect with your work and maybe learn more about you? Or if they want to reach out, maybe they're struggling in some way with recovery, I'm sure you'd be willing to help, maybe guide them, not as a coach per se, but just as a friend to say, hey man, I've been there too. I've been in those shoes. I know what that looks like. I've walked that road. How can folks do that?
Yeah. So my website is Seánie Cameras, SEANNIE cameras.com. You can also find me on all the socials, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, same handle, Seánie Cameras, or at Seánie Cameras. And hopefully you'll see a nice buffet of work and creativity. And I don't limit myself to, just one thing, or like portraiture or advertising. It could be travel, it could be streets, it could be music videos, it could be documentary, it could be a lot of different things. So I just feel very blessed that I have such a wide range of interests, and I'm able to accept a lot of different kinds of creative work to scratch that itch and make a living.
Nice. Appreciate that. Well, Seán, I think it's only appropriate we play the fastest growing game in the podcast community. It's called Heel Hustle.
It's now that time in the show to play the fastest growing game in the podcast world. We call it Heel Hustle. Today our guest will try to answer all 6 of these questions in 60 seconds or less to win an Amazon gift card. Amazon not responsible for this commercial spot, nor did they pay to let us use their name. Audience, feel free to play at home. Are you ready? Let's put 60 seconds on that clock. Ready, set, hustle!
The game begins.
All right, Seán, 60 seconds. Here you go. One person you would trade places with for a week.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Guilty pleasure.
Dessert.
Nice. Best compliment you've ever received.
Oh, I'm going to say it again. Shauna Murray called me reliable.
Worst piece of advice ever.
Don't go over there.
Fair enough. What's something you wish you were better at?
Ooh, not taking things personally.
What is something that never fails to make you laugh?
Farts.
We're still middle schoolers at heart, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm super excited Mike introduced us. I just wanted to acknowledge that in this moment. To me, this is what podcasting's all about. I think people forget this. This is the part I like the most. I like the recording. I like the meeting. I like all the other stuff. All the other stuff that comes afterwards that I know as soon as I hit stop, I'm going to have to do. I mean, my heart does sink a little bit because I'm like, there's so much work ahead of me. But the joy of it, the joy of meeting someone else, to walk in their shoes, to understand what they've come through, to get to know them on a deeper level is something that's just so cool to me still. And that's what I guess pushes me forward in this.
Thank you, man. And I'm going to say, thank you to Mike, obviously. Thank you just for a forum and an interest in me and my story. Really, I think the big takeaway to what you just said is I had a long time enjoying the process, the minutia. And I think that's kind of what I heard from you right there is just like really just enjoying the process with everything. And then you're allowed, hopefully the grace of the hindsight later to realize like kind of how special it was or what it really meant to you. And find a deeper level of gratitude. So I am grateful for every opportunity I take, whether you had 19 seasons of this or this was your first season, like I just, if I think I can add value to it, then like I'm all in. And if I can't, then I'll try to pass you to somebody that I feel could, right? So thank you for the forum and the interest.
We appreciate that. All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today. I won't say hooray because I don't know. It's a rarity. It really is. When a guest causes me to stop and switch gears, it makes me think about when I was a little kid and I got my first mountain bike. Do you guys remember those? You had mine was fancy. You had the gear shifter in the handlebars. It was the coolest thing ever. I thought that was the most amazing thing ever. My dad told me you have to pedal and then shift. You can't just shift because the chain will come off. Well, I didn't think my dad knew what he was talking about. I mean, he was rarely there. What would Gunny know? Seriously, what would he know? So I didn't. The very first time out, I didn't listen. I just shifted. You know what happened? You could probably guess. The chain came off. And I just remember going back to my house, pushing my bike back because I couldn't get the chain on because I'm not mechanically savvy. Those that know me know. Neil with a hammer, dangerous. But maybe today your chain has come off and you don't know what to do. You need to go home. And you need to really say, okay, now what do I do again? Well, you put the chain on and you pedal some more and you learn to shift while you're pedaling. It's a skill. It's an art. And I think Sean illustrated that today. So hopefully you got that message. If you didn't, let me know. opspodcast.com is a great place to let me know. You can listen to us also. Past episodes at opspodcast.com is a great place. You can let us know on the socials. We're there at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. And of course, don't forget this. Take this with you when you go. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do gain a different perspective on life. Thanks so much for listening and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.